Welcome to Four Favorites, brought to you by the Quiet on Set podcast. I'm your host, Jungen ZFF, and today I'm joined by the artistic director of the Zurich Film Festival, Jungen. So, welcome, Christian.
Hi.
On Favorites, we talk about a specific theme, genre, or subject, and this month in December, we're talking about animation. You know, with the background of being a festival director, you are quite familiar with having to make a selection. Now, here you had to choose 4 animated films. I assume that was no easy task overall. So, do you have some honorable mentions?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be part of this show and to talk about animation films, which were my first love. So when I was a little boy and went to the movies, the Disney animation film right before Christmas was a must. And when I became a film critic, I always felt that animation is sitting at the children's table. And I was very happy when they grew up and played at Cannes. So my first honorable mention, which didn't make the cut, is Up, a Pixar film that kicked off the Cannes Film Festival like 10 years ago, and which is magic, the old man flying away in a balloon. This is a film I have seen over and over again, which I want to mention. And then obviously you can't be a cinephile, talk about animation, and not mention the Ghibli studios from Japan.
Yes.
So my pick is Spirited Away, which is just a gorgeous, beautiful, and very emotional film.
Yeah, definitely. The Ghibli films are the ones, and the Pixar ones that I guess are mentioned the most on across all of the lists. So
they should be taught at school.
They should, yeah.
Ghibli films should be taught at school as you teach Goethe or Shakespeare, because they're part of film history and of the canon, and it's a shame that so many people still don't know them.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think we can say about your first pick, the first one on your list, which is a sequel, but I think it's a cult classic already. It's been out for 18 years at this point, but you got Shrek 2 on your list, the first spot on your list. So tell us about that.
Well, Shrek 2 together with Terminator 2 is one of the few sequels in film history which is better than the original, I think. And it was a groundbreaking film because it was in the early 2000s when the Cannes Film Festival started to open up. Already the first Shrek played in competition. And for many, this was like a Satan's mess in Peter's Dome. And then a sequel from an animation playing in competition. This was a historic moment. And I was part of this press screening, 8:30 in the morning, and then a 12-minute standing ovation. It's funny. It's one of the few Dreamworks films that is really character-based and is not after the effect, but it's all about characters. It has one of the best opening scenes of any film because Shrek and Fiona go to their parents' castle, the castle far, far away, to celebrate their marriage. And then the parents realize, oh, she didn't marry a prince, but an ugly ogre, and there is a silence, and it's funny and tragic at the same time. Then the film is full of colorful secondary characters which have the traits of their voice talents. So there is Puss in Boots, voiced by Antonio Banderas, who is a flamboyant Latin lover. And of course, there is the donkey, voiced by Eddie Murphy, who talks all the time. And it was done with a new rendering technique, which makes the faces more expressive. And I really like this film. I think it was done in the heydays of animation. The late 90s and the early 2000s were the groundbreaking years. And obviously Pixar is the better studio than DreamWorks, which is too worldly in its references. There are references to Starbucks, to Burger King. I always preferred the fairy tale world. But here they, for once, got it really right. At the Oscar, the film lost against The Incredibles, and I'm a huge Pixar fan, and I think Shrek 2 should have won.
Yeah, with your pick, I had the chance to revisit this. I haven't seen it in like 10 years myself, and it really holds up. It's still a great film. Now, you just mentioned Pixar. Your next film is from Pixar, from that, I guess, late golden era of Pixar, where pretty much every movie they released was close to a masterpiece, in part due to Brad Bird, a great director doing films over at Pixar. And your next pick is The Rat who somehow cooks really well in Ratatouille.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Pixar is like Godard or Spielberg. I
Mhm,
consider this studio to be an auteur with its own signature. And for me, this studio turned out 12 masterpieces in a row, and then they kind of lost it.
mhm,
And among all the masterpieces, this is the best one. First of all, it's part of this American fascination with European lifestyle.
yeah,
You know, the Americans always have an inferiority complex, especially when it comes to France.
mhm,
And it's one of these films like An American in Paris, which celebrate Paris, Frenchness. And then they do the unthinkable. The main character is a rat, and you would think, oh, that's rather ugly. And they turn him into a chef.
mhm,
Pixar is good because they try to understand the world they depict, and they've worked with famous chef Thomas Keller. They have researched the Parisian cuisine, and last but not least, it's a big homage to the critic Pope. Even there is a guy called Anton Ego who is a restaurant critic and who eats the ratatouille cooked by the rat. And then there comes one of the best flashbacks and zoom in film history. He eats the ratatouille, and that reminds him the cooking of his own mother. And then he turns out a marvelous review. And this film is so dense and so perfect in every detail that I really think it's not only one of the best animation films, but it's one of the best films coming out of Hollywood. And if I was part of this poll, you know, the Sight and Sound
mhm.
best 100 films, I would have picked this one for the poll too. I think it's important that we also highlight the craft of animation. I've been to Emeryville to visit the studios twice to meet these character animators,
Mhm.
and I collect books signed by them where you can see their storyboards, and there is so much more behind than what you see on the screen. And I recommend people watching this show, if you should pick one of the fours and give it a try, take Ratatouille.
Hopefully, some people will take you up on that. The next one, I gotta say, was a bit hard to find myself to go see because it's quite a recent release from last year, 2021. It's a German-Austrian production about a small town in the 60s and a bunch of snotty boys, as it's called in the English version. The original one in German says Willkommen in Siegheilkirchen. So, yeah, can you tell us about this film?
When I was a teenager, I loved to read a magazine called Mad. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's still familiar with people,
Yeah.
but this was a politically incorrect saying things you're not allowed to say. And here we have a raunchy satire on an Austrian village, on the everyday racism of regular people. It's inspired by the cartoons of Manfred Dykes, who was a famous Austrian cartoonist who died of an illness. And the film takes place in the 60s, and the son of the restaurant owner, who is a bit of an outsider, starts to draw and express his sexual desire, xenophobia through his drawings, and has the whole village against him, especially the mayor and the church, who work very closely together. And it's just outrageously funny, but also a commentary of Austrian society. And we showed it also at the Zurich Film Festival,
Mhm.
and it was a bit tough to get people to see it, but those who saw it were pretty enthusiastic about it.
Right. Well, an interesting pick there. Probably not on the radar for a lot of people. So go check that out if you can. Last but definitely not least, we got a stop motion film on your list. Also a claymation film, a Swiss film, if I'm not totally mistaken. I think it's a Swiss production, right? The 2016 Claude Barras film, My Life as a Zucchini.
There was a first Swiss animation which cost 30 million
Hmm.
by the title of Max and Co. a couple of years ago, and it was a huge flop. And that did a lot of damage to the Swiss animation scene.
Hmm.
And this is like a good example that we can make it, that we can break out of our borders. It's done by Claude Barras from Valais, but the screenplay was co-written with Céline Sciamma, one of the
Hmm.
most exciting French directors. And it's about a little boy who grows up with his single mother who is an alcoholic, and then in a little fight he pushes her down the stairs and she dies. He comes to an orphanage. He has to suffer mobbing, but he also finds love. He finds Ersatzfamily. And it's a perfect example that even if a family entertainment film, you can pack in serious topics. And I like the stop motion techniques. The characters have big heads and big eyes, and they reflect pretty much the inner state of the characters. And by the way, the film was nominated for an Oscar, Golden Globes, it won Caesars, it won the Children's Prize at the Zurich Film Festival and made 180,000 entries in Swiss theaters, which is pretty good. And I thought to encourage the local scene, we should mention that in your show.
Yeah, definitely. It's one that broke the barrier with those nominations, getting those wins. I feel like that's always a great thing to get people outside of the local, I guess, release for a film to get to see it a bit more. So I believe some people probably are already familiar with this film.
If I pick two European titles, it's also, we should keep in mind that the best people working in Southern California or in Northern California, Pixar is in Emeryville, close to San Francisco. A lot of these people are European. So they come out of our film schools, and then the studios, they survey who is doing his degree in Paris or in Berlin, and they just bring people over.
Yeah.
Like in the old days, Disney was from Germany, and there is a lot of tradition in not only fairy tale drawing, but in character development. And the European element is very important for the Hollywood studios. And so I think we should also be proud and celebrate our own productions in the field of animation.
Yes, certainly. And for those who want to share what their picks might be, maybe they include a bunch of European productions. Would be really interesting to see some selections down there as well. And again, thank you so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure. Anytime again, if you like.
Yeah, it's a long while off until the next Zurich Film Festival in fall of 2023. But if you're around, step by. They always got a great selection there. Like you said, the films that made it onto your list that you were playing at the festival. So great to see some animation in the festival circuit here in Switzerland as well.
When I took over the Zurich Film Festival, I was told that animation films are difficult. And I thought, no, animation film is like a romantic comedy or a thriller or a social drama. If they are good, we should show them. And the reaction by people proved that I was right. Today, maybe this is a question of generations. It's really, I mean, these are the films that drive people into theaters these days. If we didn't have animation films in theater, the situation for the cinemas would even be worse than it is already. So I'm glad you picked animation for December, and there are a couple of good ones ahead. So I hope people are going to see them on a big screen.
Yeah, speaking, I guess, one last tie over to Shrek. We are getting the Puss in Boots sequel, I think by the end of this year or early next year at some point. So yeah, even that franchise is still going strong, pumping out new sequels. Looking forward to having you back at some point. And yeah, to the viewers, see you soon.